Welcome, party people. How's everybody doing? Welcome to me. I am me. That is all I can be, and that is me. I am here just on Skyline Boulevard, just off the 92. Half Moon Bay is that way. San Fran is that way. And the 35 is that way. So I'm going to take, looks like that sign says Junction 84, 13 miles. So I'm going to take a little trip over to this place called Applejack's. It's just a bar in the middle of the hills here of the peninsula of San Francisco. Just right there in the yonder is the 280 freeway. And we're kind of right, basically where the San Andreas Fault runs through. There's not a whole lot of back roads back here that really good to ride on, so I'm limited. And the Skyline is always a nice one. It takes you all the way down to Santa Cruz, and there's a couple of little roads that'll branch off from there. In regards to canyons, see, I'm used to LA riding where there's, you know, you got canyons and you got beaches and you got like lots of land to explore. And over here it's a little more compact. Just stopped off here for a quick selfie moment and to start this vlog, and we're gonna get right into it. We had some interesting events last night, and as I talked about in my last vlog that I was gonna try to lighten this up, get away from the heavy stuff, talk about my partying days when I was a music promoter, a music booker, and we'll kind of go into that whole thing right there. It is super nice out. Temps are amazingly cool. I mean, like, it is probably like 75 right now. It's definitely a beautiful day out here. It's hot, you know, rare to say that for San Francisco Bay. It's really beautiful out here, especially for coming into the middle of October here. So take advantage of it, go for a little ride. So let's go. Last night was a very fun night. West Coast Pro Wrestling was having their very first show. I found out about it through a fellow friend of mine. He's also a wrestler, goes by the name of Terex. And so I posted a flyer for this show, and I saw that it was also 2 miles down from where I live up here in the Bay. And I said, hey, I gotta go check out that show and see what I can be of help. And since I'm trying to network, get to know a lot of the promoters up here, get them to know me, I sent a message off to the promoter for West Coast Pro Wrestling. He got back to me about a week later. He said, hey, we're all booked up, but you know, I could definitely use your help. I did offer my help. I said, all right, cool, you know, give me the time when to be there and blah, blah, blah. And going into this show last night, I was just there to be an extra hand, help out, you know, and put my best foot forward. I get to the show last night, and, oh, I guess I should, I forgot to mention that they switched up the venue. So it went from San Bruno over to Pacifica. Now, Gold Rush Wrestling, they have the place, the gold mine out there at Pacifica, and Sparky Ballard, who runs that promotion and runs that that's pretty much his building. He's got a nice setup. If you could actually, I will link Gold Rush Wrestling. I'll link their YouTube page. Go check it out. They have a really nice venue, really nice setup. He put a lot of work and time into that. It definitely shows. It is a awesome place to wrestle. Awesome place to go check out a show. So if you're a fan, definitely go check it out. And you're in the area, Pacifica area, or anywhere in the San Francisco Bay, it's just a nice place. Definitely go check it out. So anyways, the show got moved over there. I check in with the promoter. He's like, all right, well, you know, you be an extra hand, help out. And then, you know, a few minutes later, he hits me up, like, hey, you want to operate the camera? Sure, no problem. You do anything. So I went and did gives me all the camera, shows me what we're going to do, has me meet up with the other videographer. And so we were going to, I was just set up to do camera work for the show. And we were talking about our positions and, where we're going to be shooting at and, little ideas to try to get the best shots. it was probably about 15 minutes go by or so. We were about 15 minutes away from opening up the doors. And the promoter comes at me. He's like, hey, I had a cancellation. Can you fill in? Sure, no problem. I'm all for it. Basically, it was the Fatus versus the Bad Boys. The Fatu that there was Jacob Fatu and Journey Fatu, and it was going to be Journey that I was going to be tag teaming with. And this is kind of interesting because the last time I tagged with a Samoan, it was way back in the early 2000s, and it was me and Rikishi versus Count Black Pearl and Antonio Maestre. And that was, I'm trying to recall back to that. That was definitely a very fun match. Learned a lot from those guys. So it was kind of interesting. Some years later, here I am. I'm tagging with his nephew. We get everything set up, and we go out. We have a fun little match, and I ended up taking the finisher and taking the loss for our team. But definitely had a lot of fun being able to get back in the ring again and compete and perform for the fans. And I learned a lot from Journey. He got to sit with me and talk with me a little bit, and so he was a big help, and I really appreciate all that he did for me. So that was last night. Yeah, got to wrestle again. Woohoo! This is the kind of riding I like. I like tree lines and shade, and even though it's kind of cooler in the shade than it is in the sunlight. Yeah, cruising along here, love it. Anyways, so the topic for today. But just kind of, I guess these first few vlogs are really just kind of an expanded introduction of me and getting to know me. Music has always been in my life. I had my Tio Eddie and my Tio Yaki, who, growing up at the parties, they'd be sitting out there on the porch or inside and jamming away on the guitars, and they provided all the entertainment for the family. Being Mexican, we definitely have big family get-togethers, and we know how to party. Having the music around me and the guitars, my Tio Eddie would always try to show me how to play, and eventually got my own guitar, and so I kind of loosely was playing. I didn't dedicate myself. This kind of goes back to the whole dad thing and not following through, and then I just kind of not followed through with anything. Being a young man, I used to do what every young person does. They like to, well, not every person, but the ones that like to go out, party, and socialize. That's what I did. But I found places where there was live bands going on, and me and my buddy Jeff, we'd go out and party and go hang out, watch these bands, and get to know them, and try to go to the after parties, just be part of that life. And we ended up becoming, because we had our own aspirations to have our own band, and I started learning how to play bass. At the time, I had a roommate that was a guitar player, so he was showing me stuff and showing me different songs. And MySpace, talk about aging myself. MySpace, 2004. So MySpace was the thing, and that thing was, when I signed on, it was only like 6,000 profiles, and then that thing freaking blew up to millions and millions and millions, and then Facebook came along, and then down it went. And that's a whole other conversation about why that happened. MySpace had this feature that was a MySpace blog, and so it was just kind of it was just essentially, entries that you could write. You could blog. That was the thing. Blogging was the thing. Not vlogging with the V, blogging with the B. Writing pages and pages and pages of stuff if you wanted to. And so I would write about stuff. I'd put my poems up and try to, philosophize on things. Ooh, get philosophical on things. So I was going to these shows And I started writing about the bands that I was watching, more specifically about 33 Degree. MySpace had music profiles, so that's where the bands can start up. Yeah, and it would be different bands and stuff, but 33 Degree was my main focus. And then somewhere along the line, after writing about these shows, and I wish the MySpace kept the features, because I would have loved to have gone back and check out those blogs and even moved them over to Facebook or whatever. You know, I'll hook up all through there, you know, and I had MySpace as a nice vehicle of finding all these local bands. And so I started putting it out there. I started, I started talking to these different bands, and I'm like, hey, give me your press kits, you know, and I'll try to find shows for you guys. So that was the first thing. And then as I was putting those messages out there, I made it a point to go talk to the owner of The Vibe, Mike Sherman. And so I hit up Mike, I go check out the place, and I go early in the day and talk to the dude. I'm like, hey, what's you got any nights going on? I'm gonna start promoting. I'm gonna start putting shows together. He's like, well, right now my Sundays are not doing so great. I got reggae on the Sundays. And he's like, what kind of music are you gonna be doing? I'm like, well, metal, because I heard you guys are like rocking it with the metal. You guys are really doing a good attendance, so I'm gonna try to focus in on that. He's like, all right. Well, let's look, you know, a couple months down the road. So we're gonna start Sunday nights. This is so between 2004 and then I had my first shows 2005. One of my first shows booked was at this place called Tremors. It was right down the street from The Vibe. My very first show was In This Moment, 33 Degree, 32 Leaves, and I think that was it. So 33 Degrees is an LA band, and they were friends with In This Moment. And this is before In This Moment popped off and got really popular. Here's how it happened. So 33 Degree. So I found them through MySpace, and at the time I was roadieing for a band Jugular, and at the same time, me and my roommates were starting up our band Devils and Angels. And then I was also writing about Jugular. And it was because of Jugular, I saw how they book shows and stuff. And so I was like, I know I could do this. I was kind of picking up on the manager, Charlie's business tactics. And so that's how I was really starting to figure it all out, like try to go into another part of the music business. So we got Devils and Angels together. I was the bass player for Devils and Angels. My roommate was a guitar player, and then his brother was the drummer, and then our other roommate was the singer. We wanted to play our very first show, and so I hit up this place that, through Jugular, a place that they used to play. Through them, I hit up that place and said, hey, you know, we're gonna have our first show, and he's like, all right, cool. So we had to open up and find other bands. I got 33 Degree. I'm trying to remember if Devils and Angels booked any more shows. I think we went through some member changes, and I ended up out of the band, and because the the guitar player wanted to replace, didn't want his brother to leave. His brother wanted to play bass, and so they ended up moving me out. Brother went to bass. They got another drummer, and out of the band I was. After that happened, and I was really getting into the blog writing, and I was really understanding what I could do, then that's what made me go to check out The Vibe, and then I did the Tremors thing, and I started doing Sin Sundays from there. Now, for the first 3 months or so of so basically my first show was in October of 2005. I did the Jägermeister show. I surrounded it with 33 Degree, Chiva, Dyer, yes, and there was one more for the first 3 months, it was kind of a struggle. So in October of 2005, I did the Jägermeister show and I brought Dirty D out. That's right. We had him as host. I wanted to make this a big show and try to get some of his promotion into it. It didn't come off as a big show. There's only like 30, 40 people there. But that was the initial communication with D, and I asked him about possibly like doing more shows. And he was talking about like doing a partnership. So we got to talking a little bit more, and we eventually wanted to start all over again in January. So I started October, and I ran October, November, December, and then, which, you know, it wasn't doing so hot. And then with Dirty D coming on board, it definitely helped things a lot. Sin Sundays came to be. Now, I believe I wasn't calling it Sin Sundays at first. I think I was calling it Sinful Sundays or Sunday Sinners or some shit like that. But Dirty D used to do Sin Sundays when he was running his nights, and so we decided to revamp it to that and bring back the Sin Sundays. We had wet t-shirt contests, we did the bands, and then we would do the, he would do the DJ music in between the bands. And so it was this big party. This is when the fun started. For the wet t-shirt contest, that was a big part of the fun. It was really, everything was just kind of done, like we didn't have like a dressing room, so everything was done in the kitchen. We had to help some of these girls get their pasties on and cut their t-shirts and things like that. So we definitely had a lot of fun. And then of course the judging of the contests, and you know, and then Dirty D had his girls getting the other girls to participate. We put up like $75 or something like that. And we were drawing for a Sunday night, we were doing about 150 to 200 every Sunday, which was amazing. You know, for a Sunday night, we were doing really well, and we did well for about the first 6 months. One of the big contributors to that, and he's a big part of my life, he is permanently tattooed onto my skin. I can't show you because it's on the back of my arm. Shauner Kettlewell. He was probably my biggest supporter. I have a King's Crown and IE medal stamped onto the crown. King of IE medal. And then I put Shauner's name onto the rim of the crown. And it had a double meaning, because initially when I got it done, me and another promoter, Pixie, she was the queen of IE Metal, and she got the tattoo first. She got the Queen's Crown. She's like, hey, you should get the King's Crown. And since we really ran a lot of venues out of the Inland Empire, between me and her, we were pretty much the only game in town. There were other promoters, but not as prominent as we were. With all the venues that we ran, most of the time you had to run through us, and so it made sense. And so yeah, I was like, all right, cool, I'll get that. And then at the time, that's when Shauner passed away in a freak accident, and it was a freak accident. There was a guy going southbound on the 215 freeway out in San Bernardino. He was chasing his girlfriend down. Whatever they were going through, some domestic violence bullshit, and she was going down in her car southbound as well, and he was trying to chase her down. And then at some point he was trying to ram her off the road. She hit the brakes. He ended up hitting the center divider, the K-rail, and in that the battery dislodged from the hood, from underneath the front of the engine compartment, went across the side of the other side of the freeway, which at the time Shauner was headed to work, and went through the windshield. He instantly died. And what's even worse about it is when I found out about it was, and where I found out where he was struck at, I was in the traffic that was trying to get through there. I was able to get off at the exit prior to where the accident was at, Otherwise, I probably would have passed and seen his truck, and I would have seen him. But I missed all that. And how I memorialized him on the tattoo and made him king of IE metal. And that was where the double meaning comes in at, is because he helped the bands in the local scene so much. He lived nearby the Vibe and other venues in the area, and he was a drummer himself. He was a musician. He had all the stuff. He had the drums, he had the guitars, he had the amps, he had the mics, and he had a full band setup. And if someone needed something, he'd be like, I got you. And he'd go home, grab this whatever they were missing, and come back to the venue so that band could be able to jam and perform that night. He came out to my very first Sin Sundays, and from there it was just like a match made in heaven. Every time I drive in for the night, he was right there chilling in the parking lot with his Bud Light in the back of his truck, just chilling. And he would tell all of his friends to come out and support me, support Dirty D, support the night, because I was using a lot of the local bands and friends that he knew. And so Shawner was a big part of that. And after he had passed away, we had a memorial shows for him. A friend of his made a beautiful sign that hung over the stage for the entirety of the Vibe, until Mike had to close the doors a couple years back. So that was really nice to be able to, every so often I would either, if I went into the Vibe, I hadn't been in there in years after I stopped doing my nights. I went in a couple of times to check how things were going. I'd see pictures and see that the sign was still up. And so I'd have my Sundays go on, and at the time I used to go down to the Key Club in Hollywood, the Whiskey, and I'd go hunt bands down. And one time, one band called Arcadia, they handed me a demo, and I got to talk to them. I'm like, you got an accent? And he's like, yeah, we're from Italy. I'm like, what? So yeah, we're from Italy, we're trying to find shows and this and that. So I'm like, all right, I'll get you guys booked at the Vibe. They didn't have amps or nothing, but they had these little pocket, these pedals that that I don't know, they plugged into our sound system, and they were able to play all their full-on guitar sound. It was crazy. Anyways, so that was my very first band that I booked that came from another country. Well, in doing that, I don't know how it came through, but I can't remember right now, but somehow a band from Holland wanted to also come and have their very first shows in America, and they wanted to go through me. So I hit them back up, and we got to talking about the specifics. I said, you guys are going to stay at my place where I was living at in Riverside, and we're gonna host you. You're gonna sleep on my floor. It will save you some money, and I'm gonna get you a bunch of shows. And through Pixie and some favors I had to call in at other places, we were able to get them a slew of shows throughout SoCal. And then in that, they were networking with other bands that got them shows elsewhere, and they just had an amazing time. This band was called Force Feed. Yeah, I'm still in contact with a couple of the guys. Well, one of them, Leonard, the singer, and we had such an awesome time. I was able to go on stage and sing with them on one of their songs. So good, so good. I mean, I've met so many friends. I can't even begin to talk about all the people that I'm still friends with today. Because of Sin Sundays. One band, Catharsis, oh my god. Catharsis was amazing. They were one of my early bands that started with me in 2005, and they changed singers out, and the singer they changed out with was Adam, and to this day he is one of my very close, dearest best friends. One of those times where it was such an amazing good time. It was such a memorable time of my life, and for me to sit here and think about every single moment, that's going to be tough to do. So what I can do is just give you a generalized overview of it all. So yes, I hosted a band from another country. I have a tattoo to commemorate my time there. In that time of my life, hosted Body Count, which is Ice-T's band. One of the promoters from Friday Night, he was like, he was the one that initialized it. And he's like, I want to get Body Count down here. He can't come on Friday, but he could do Sunday. So he gave me the night to do. So and he booked it all. Essentially, I essentially kind of shared the night with him. He was the one that booked it all and everything, and then he was just kind of sharing the profits and stuff with me. But definitely got credit for doing that. And I did all this under my promotion's name, Fire in the Hole Entertainment. I was trying to eventually, it was something that I was going to eventually, I wanted to have my own label. I wanted to have artists signed. I wanted to get a distributorship. I wanted to have a recording studio to record bands. I had this whole thing in my head. I was on break from wrestling at the time, and so, I have this all-in personality. I'm trying to remember, did any bands that I worked with become famous? Sangre, they were a big help for me during those times. Who else? Sangre, Damen, they were freaking amazing. I can recall about how when they first started out, they needed Christopher Damen needed a place to basically kind of fine-tune the music and the bandmates and everything, and so I was able to book them at the Vibe, and they were such amazing artists. And then they just grew and grew and grew. He was a songwriter as well. He sold his music. He eventually got himself all in the right places and with the right people, and got himself signed. That was a guy that was very ambitious and very driven to get his stuff out there, and he had the talent to do it. So that was really, really cool to be able to say, hey, I booked that band early, kind of quote unquote discovered them. And then Sangre in this moment, going back to a band earlier, Catharsis. And then there was another band, Scape Throat. So the singer for Catharsis is no longer with Catharsis, and he was without a band. The Scape Throat crew, the guitar player and the drummer, they were both out of a band and in need of a singer. And then all they needed was a bass player. Who do you think filled that spot? Me. I wasn't the greatest bass player. Let me just start that off right away. I'm not the greatest bass player. I had to be taught everything. I had to practice it. Even then, my technique was still fairly flawed and was not as clean as it could have been. But against these musicians, I should have absolutely been a lot cleaner in my tone and everything. But I was able to be with them for 3 shows. I got 1 show booked at the Vibe with Chandela and who else was with us? I'm trying to remember right now. And we packed it pretty good. In fact, we had our biggest night there. It was like 266 people. That was an amazing night. When we were playing, I whipped my guitar around and during a breakdown, and the headstock had smashed the guitar player in the bridge of the nose,
and like a true professional, man, he just shook it off and kept playing through it, and he was bleeding too, man. I was like, oh, I felt so bad afterwards. All I know is after I did it, all I heard was, oh! And I was like, well, I look over and I see that he's bleeding from the nose. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. I felt so bad, but he fucking kept playing, man, and that was awesome. Mikey C, that was awesome. That was the first show, and then the second show was old school place that is no longer there, the Showcase in Corona, a very legendary place, I should say, as well. And we had a show there. I'm trying to remember who it was with. All I know is that we had about 300 people to play in front of. How awesome was that? So we played in front of 300 people. Those videos are actually on YouTube. If you look up Dead or Judged, that is the band that I was with. I'm talking about them and I didn't even call the name out because I just got into it. But yes, that was the name of the band, Dead or Judged. We were basically a super group. A promoter, a singer from one band, and a guitar and drummer from another band, another well-known band. So it was just really cool how it all just kind of came together, and it was a really good time. Oh, next show was at the Gypsy Lounge, which I got hooked up through a friend of mine, in Hector, in Chiva. So I got to play with Chiva. I love Chiva. Chiva's an amazing band. And they were a Jägermeister band. I met them through 33 Degree. And Hector is one of the coolest mofos out there. And after Chiva, he ended up playing bass for Flatline. That was cool. Anyways, Flatline, there's another band I can definitely go on and on about. The singer and the guitar player for that band are now in this moment. So after playing the Gypsy Lounge, then and then we recorded our first demo, which I'm on, and that was a cool experience as well, as being able to lay down tracks. But that exposed my weaknesses, and so it was a cause for them to, and I wasn't, you know, and I wasn't also practicing as much as I should have. They probably expected me to practice hours a day, and I wasn't. And so they ended up dropping me and picking up another bass player who, above and beyond, is so much better. Like, I'd rather know that I was being replaced by someone who was better than me versus, you know, someone who was worse. So the fact that they got John now John was the bass player in Springwood. And Springwood broke up, and so John, he's an amazing bass player. So they picked him up, and then their sound just, they just kind of shot through the roof after that. They did so well with him on board in regards to writing and everything like that. He was a missing piece of the puzzle. But I got to have my time, and it was shortly thereafter things with Sin Sundays started to really die out. The first year was the best year, and then trying to keep up with it after that, I would take most of the responsibility for that, since I was the one controlling the night. I should have reinvested into the night. Financial problems kind of kept me from, so the money I did make was going more into trying to pay the bills versus trying to put it back into the night. And I could have done so much, like Five Finger Death Punch at the time that they were trying to book their very first tour, because they were just about to release their first album and explode on the scene, and I go to find that I couldn't get the money to book it. And after that, when I was like, I can't get the money together right now, but I'm still trying, And then the tour manager hit me back up and he's like, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to start our stuff over here in the Midwest. And so I missed an opportunity to get Five Finger Death Punch. And of course, you know, nobody knew them at the time. And even Dirty D was like, they're not going to draw anything. Well, go to find that as soon as they came out, they blew up and they were selling out everywhere they went. We could have had a bomb night. Was my time in music, between the bands and booking and everything. It was definitely something that I will remember forever. So I am a man of many talents. I wish I would have stuck with it. I think attendance across the board was down. The economy went to shit, and so it was a tough time. And I didn't stick it out. You know, whether I wish I could have, probably, but I didn't. There's times I go to a live show and I'm like, I wish I would have stuck with it. But then when I'm away from it and I'm in wrestling or whatever, and then I'm like, okay, not a big deal. So that's it, and I'm almost back to where I started the vlog at. The people that I've met, friendships that I've made and continue to hold on to this day. You know, I'm gonna cherish that. It doesn't get any better than that when you got good people like that in your life, and to know that you have something special. And yes, some years later, a couple years ago, I got word that Mike had to shut the Vibe down. It wasn't making money for him anymore. It wasn't making business sense for him anymore. He was having to go back to wrenching. He was a mechanic before running the Vibe, and he was finding himself going back to being a mechanic because it was just dumping more money into it, and he wasn't getting, you know, and the area changed too, so he wasn't getting the same amount of people there like he used to. And when their attendance is down and you're at a loss all the time, it only makes sense to call it a night. I got to go there and be there for the last night. I didn't get to party all night because I heard some guys close it down at like, didn't leave that place until 6 a.m. But that wasn't feasible for me to do. But I was able to go and reunite with old friends and just have a good time. I put it up on my Facebook. I did it on live, so some people were able to kind of relive that moment, that last night with us. And I'm coming up to the final loop here, so I'm gonna call it a day as well. I gotta get back to the homestead and get dinner going for the girls. I had such an awesome night last night, wrestling again, and you know, I'm out here vlogging. It's such a beautiful couple hours here with the weather. Now it's starting to really cool down. It's a really nice day out. So I was able to kind of share a little bit, another piece of my history with you. I'm just gonna call it a day. As for what my next topic will be, we'll see. I'm spontaneous like that. I don't plan these things out really. But we'll see what's up. But anyways, here I come, going home. Y'all stay up. What is it? Shiny side up, rubber side down. Horns up, and we'll see you next time.